In this video, we're going to be taking a look at this. It is a bog standard PC from probably the mid-90s, I would say, by the looks of things. We'll take a look and try to get a guess for what's inside, open it up, see if there's anything wrong, and see if this thing is still working. Get ready for bog standard PC TV. It's coming up right now on the Retro Hack Shack After Hours. All right, my name is Aaron, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome for the first time if you haven't been here before. This is my second channel, Retro Hack Shack After Hours. And yeah, we talk about things that may not make it on the main channel here. This is one of them. This is a PC that I found a while ago on eWaste. So I guess this is technically an eWaste Wednesday video where eWaste Wednesday spells out ew. And this is definitely one of those. It's pretty rusty and dirty. It's a PC from the mid-90s. And yeah, I say bog standard because everything that I've seen so far on this case, just looking at it, screams bog standard. The case looks like a third-party case. You know, it's got the no-name logo here, whatever that is. Like, I don't even know. It's just some boxes over here on the case badge. And yeah, kind of one of those crummy, I don't even know if that's going to come off, one of those crummy push button power switches. So this is I can tell right away this is an AT style power switch because it's an on-off, not a momentary switch. It does have a 24-speed CD-ROM here on the front. I don't know if that's an upgrade to a previous system, or maybe this is what the original owner put in here. Who knows? I guess we'll never know. But 24 speed to me on the front says that this is probably a Pentium class machine, probably a mid to late 90s machine. I could be wrong. We could find a 486 in here. Who knows? But right away, just looking at this is screaming to me mid to late 90s. Taking a look at the ports here, yeah, we definitely have, these are even labeled LPT1. Here's a COM port. Here's a 25-pin COM port, AT style keyboard. Someone labeled this COM port mouse, so they're using a serial mouse here on this thing. We have some sort of video card. Here's an interesting sound card. It's got a MIDI connection and it's got the jacks here, but then it's got a volume control here in the middle of these jacks. Nothing in these two slots. And then down here in the bottom, no, that's it, just rust. Nothing but rust down here on the bottom. So the case is not in good shape. Let me go ahead and crack it open and we'll see what's on the inside. Using my trusty Amazon Basics electric screwdriver. This went under a different name before. I forget what the name was. Maybe I can put it on the screen, but it's, again, bog standard electric screwdriver, I guess, but it's a pretty good one. This thing has high ratings from all those people that do like reviews of all of the cordless screwdrivers, you know, you can get. This one actually comes out pretty well in all of those reviews. And I must say, I've been pretty pleased with the amount of torque you can get from it. And it just kind of works. Whoa, did you see that? Something, maybe this is just bent. I don't know. Something's going on there. This one also has, I should mention, a little slot here on the back with this thing that goes through it, which I guess you could put like a lock if you wanted to lock the PC case, and that would keep the case from sliding out. There we go. Comes right off, it looks like. And yeah, I see what the problem was. This may be the death knell for this thing, depending on if it affected the motherboard or not. Look at this. So this is some definite carnage. I don't even know how this would happen inside the case. I mean, I can probably, yeah, I think I'll be able to bend that back, but that's what was causing that case to stick out. Yeah, so again, something drastic has happened here because this cage that's carrying the hard drive is still in here. Maybe it'll boot up, who knows? But this has just absolutely fallen off the metal that it's supposed to ride on. So it's almost, maybe somebody was trying to break into this case at some point because this is all mangled like crazy. And then of course there's no floppy drive. We saw that on the front. So we'll have to add a floppy drive and see if we can get this thing going. So I think I've got all the cables connected and the screws out that are holding in the motherboard. And it's just the plastic standoffs. And quick tip, after doing this, I don't know, maybe a million times over the course of my life, if you Once you've got all the screws out, if the motherboard doesn't come out easily, go ahead and stand the case back up. And on the back side of the motherboard, where the mounts are, you will see where those plastic standoffs are and where you need to move those plastic standoffs in order to get the motherboard off the back of the metal plate here, bent as it is. So if we turn this back around, and then I can push this, manipulate the motherboard with my right hand, and with my left hand, I can kind of see where those standoffs are, and it makes it a lot easier. Sometimes you kind of have to like push them gently like I'm doing now to get them into the places where they'll come off. There we go. It makes it a lot easier. Otherwise, you're kind of jiggling the motherboard around. If I was to leave the case flat like this, I would be jiggling the motherboard around, trying to get it to come off, and it would be really frustrating. But when you're pulling with this hand and looking on the back side back here and kind of manipulating those standoffs, especially since this mounting bracket is bent to heck, it makes it a lot easier to get this out. All right, well, in order to get the power supply out, I had to take off the front case and take off the power switch here. The interesting thing about this and taking it off is I found a bunch of other stuff that had already broken off. Like this, oh, it's still breaking. It's breaking in my hands, literally. Like these standoffs had broken off from somewhere on the case, and there's a wire going to this. I don't know if it's a switch or it's completely broken. I've got parts of it here. I think it might be a switch, a reset switch or something, but yeah, the standoff's broken. This plastic is broken. So I think part of the problem is the case plastic itself is super brittle at this point, at least on the front part of the case, and things were just breaking off. Plus, you got all this stress and damage going on here, which probably led to this thing breaking off. So, while I finished disassembling this PC, I want to thank the sponsor of today's episode, PCBWay. PCBWay offers low-cost, high-quality PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. They're currently celebrating their New Year's sale with up to 50% off, tons of coupons and discounts. See the site for details, so head on over to PCBWay.com, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. All right, I've got everything out of that case, and there's a bunch of parts here that could be salvaged. I mean, I've got all the LEDs and a couple of the switches and the speaker from the motherboard that we're connecting into the case. I've got the cables for the floppy and hard drive here, and the peripherals, serial port, LPT port, things like that. So this is a JLE 230 watt switching power supply, which is nice. But when I took this out, I noticed down here underneath the plugs here, there is some corrosion. Now, there was also some corrosion on the back of the case and the bottom of the case, and so what I'm worried about is that this power supply may have leaky caps, or may have had leaky caps. Maybe they've spilled all their guts by now, and that's what's causing this corrosion. So I think before I turn this on, I'll definitely be testing it for shorts. But again, we're dealing with bog standard in terms of the power supply. Everything about this thing so far is bog standard. I don't know where that name comes from, bog. Why is it bog anyway? Let me know in the comments below. What's the definition and origin of bog standard?
Bog standard means something very ordinary or basic. The term likely comes from British slang, where bog is a casual term for a toilet, implying something that's standard and unremarkable.
Can you create an image that illustrates what you just told me? Here's the 24-speed CD-ROM, as mentioned before. And if we take a look at the label, we can see that this is an Acer CD-ROM, and we've got a manufacturer date down here of November 1997. So it looks like I may have nailed the date of this system. I said mid to late 90s. November 1997 was right on. Here's the hard drive. This is a IBM 527 megabyte hard drive. Nice thing about this is it does give the cylinders, heads, and sector counts here. So if we need to, we can put those in manually, but we'll see if this thing is even working. Remember, this was in that bent chassis. And the other thing I noticed is when I picked this up, I heard some rattling. And when I turn this around, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but this whole back PCB on this thing is rattling around. I'll see if I can tighten it up, but our chances are very, very slim to see if we can get this thing working. There were also 2 cards in this system. We've got a Trio 64 Diamond Multimedia. Again, bog standard, but good for the time. It's got some room for some additional static RAM or video RAM slots perhaps up here. Diamond Stealth 64. And I use lots of these. Looks like it has some bent pins up here where my thumb is. So I'll have to fix those, make sure we don't have any shorts or anything. But yeah, this will be a good card, perfectly suited for this particular system. Yeah, and right down here, actually, by my thumb, we see a date code, 50th week, 1995 for this particular card. Again, mid to late 80s. Again, mid to late 90s. So what to go better on a bog standard system than a bog standard sound card? Now the nice thing about this one is it is an ISA card, but this is an ESS audio drive card. These are not actually that bad. People might prefer a Sound Blaster over the ESS card, but this one has all of the necessary jumpers and things to change your IRQs to get this thing working. You can enable and disable the game port on here, the /MIDI port. I assume it does MIDI as well. So this is actually a nice configurable card. It has headers for hooking up your CD-ROM if you need that, if you didn't have an extra one in your system. Plus, I think this is the extension for your expansion card for your additional voices and whatever that would go on this connector up here. So this isn't a bad card. If the electrolytic caps are still working, we might actually get sound out of this card. We'll find out when we try the system out. All right, I'm going handheld here so we can get a closer look at the motherboard. This is an A-Trend ATC 1535. It says right here in between these 2 connectors. Model motherboard, and it looks pretty capable. It's got some CPU cache over here. It's got 4 slots for 72-pin RAM here, up to 128 megs of RAM. It's got floppy, IDE, serial, parallel, all built onto the board, which was really nice. As motherboards started adding those things, later they would just add them over here on the side along with PS2 ports. But for now, with this AT-style motherboard, they were just put right here on the motherboard itself. We've got 4 PCI slots and 3 IDE slots for expansion, which is really nice. We've got an Intel, I think this was the 430 chipset, 430HX or something like that. And then a socket 7 CPU. I did a little bit of digging. It looks like also there's a cache expansion port or slot here as well. I did a little bit of digging on this, and it looks like it does support up to a Pentium 166. My first system build that I did on my own was a Pentium 90, and getting this off should be fairly easy. It's got one of these nice CPU fan brackets, at least I think. You press down on it and then you can pull it out. Yeah, there we go. This whole thing should come off. Ooh, no CPU grease, or very little that I can see. It is an Intel Pentium. Let's see what model it is. Well, according to the internet, if this can be believed anymore, this is an SX969, which is the model number written on the chip, and it's telling me this is a Pentium 75 megahertz, socket 7, of course. So again, kind of bog standard for this time. I think this would have been a CPU that somebody would have maybe had laying around and wanted to build a second system with at this point. I could be wrong, but nothing to write home about. It's not a Pentium 166 or anything, or a Pentium 200 with MMX technology. It's just a Pentium 75, but we'll see if we can get it working. Who knows? All right, so first things first, we need to see if there's any shorts on the motherboard or the power supply. So let's take a look. In the middle here, we should have ground, and we do. And we just want to eliminate on these outer pins that there is no shorts going on, and there is none, so that looks good. Now let's go ahead and check on the power supply, and I'll just set one of these in ground, and we'll just go through, and hopefully you can see the screen there. We should get some resistance between these pins, like that's the 5-volt rail, and you'll see it goes up as the capacitors are charging there, so that's completely normal. That one, make a good connection. Yeah, that's going up. Well, there's no short there. Not going up. That one's okay. So there's no shorts on the power supply, even though it looks like it's either, it could be rusted from the outside. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's leakage on the inside. All right, I've gone ahead and hooked up the power to mains, and I've got this hard drive hooked up here, which should create enough draw to get the power supply started. So let's just turn it on to see if we hear anything, get sparks, something blows up, who knows? Here we go. Well, so far so good. Fan is working fine. Hard drive does not sound good, but it did draw enough load to get this power supply working. So we've got the blue wire first, which reads negative 11.6. That'll be the negative 12 volt rail. And then we've got the 12 volt rail is low, but it's not connected to anything, so that's probably okay. 5 volt rail, 5.1, that looks great. And powered good should also be 5, and it is. So yeah, I think we've got, there's the negative 5, negative 4.7. So this power supply is actually working, and this hard drive has settled down. No more clicking and clacking. So maybe that's a good sign for the hard drive as well. I am going to need to replace this old battery. And we'll need a few sticks of memory, hopefully, to get this thing in place. 1, 2. These are slightly different, but they use the same chips on this memory, so these should work. Go ahead and plug the power back in, and we'll go ahead and put a video card in. Maybe we'll get lucky and this will all just work. All right, so I've got the video card plugged in now, and I've got it hooked up to this monitor here. I've got my Neo Retro keyboard that I've covered on the channel in the past. You can go look up that video. And I'm using a special device to hook up this USB mechanical keyboard to this AT style connector here. It's called the Hitman. I'm going to be selling it in my shop, and I'm going to do a whole video on that on the main channel. And this is actually the first time I've tested this device with an AT keyboard. Up till now, I've just been testing PS2 keyboards, a USB to PS2. Now I'm doing essentially USB to PS2 to AT. So I've got that hooked up and should be ready to power this thing on. I do have the hard drive connected to power, but it's not connected to the IDE cable. I just want it there, make sure it spins up. I kind of curious if I get that rattling noise again or if it spins up okay this time. So yeah, I think we're ready for a test. Here we go. Let's click the button. Okay, I can hear the hard drive spinning up. Are we getting anything on the screen? Any output at all? Yes, 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 yes. We've got the motherboard listed. We've got the Pentium CPU, 75 megahertz. Counting up the memory, 32 meg of memory. And this looks great. Floppy disk fail, of course, but yeah, I mean, let's get in here to the BIOS and see if we can change out the date and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and now it's just trying to boot. Let's just go ahead and go back and get in the BIOS. And the keyboard does seem to be working, so that's good. Here we go. Hit delete to go in the BIOS. And there we go. Now I had the battery out for a few seconds, but it's still saying 2016 for the date. I'm not going to worry about updating that for now. It does support 2 floppy drives on that cable. Some of the newer, once you get up into the Pentium 2, Pentium 3 era, they only support 1 floppy drive, it seems like. I think some of them do support 2, they just don't list it, but this one is actually set up for a 1.44 and a 1.2, which is very common in this era of PCs. I'll save the settings just in case these were defaulted somehow, but I'll just go ahead and save these, turn it off, and we'll hook up the cable to the hard drive. Who knows? Maybe Windows 95 is on there or something. Is it going to boot from the hard drive? Okay, it did recognize the hard drive. It's trying to find the slave, but there's no slave. Floppy disk fail, that's fine. We don't have a floppy disk. Oh! Click, click, click. It's trying to start MS-DOS. There's MS-DOS on that drive, but the head is just crashing. Crash, crash, crash. I don't know if you can hear it. Let's see. It kind of started to go, and it's not going. Maybe if we let it warm up a little bit, let it spin up and warm up, it's starting to boot. It's clicking, but it's starting to boot. It's trying so hard. Yeah, it's trying hard, but that head crashing is just an awful noise to hear. Let me go ahead and hook up a floppy drive. We'll see if we can get it boot up, and maybe we can read some of the information on this drive at least. All right, I've gone ahead and hooked up a floppy drive. I was saying floppy disk failed because we don't have the second. It's looking for this 1.2 meg floppy disk, the 5 1/4 inch disk, and of course that's not there. So this one should boot up. Now the hard drive stopped thrashing for now. Maybe we can read something off this. Let's go to C and see what happens. Okay, well, we can at least get a directory out of this. And there is a Windows directory, so this was probably running Windows 3.11, I'm guessing. Well, there's one interesting folder on here, and it's called LucyPix, and I'm able to get into the directory and do a dir on it. And, you know, you never know with something called LucyPix what you're going to find in there. I did a dir. You can see what some of these pictures are. There's Max 2, Max 4, Molly, Peekaboo, Santa, Sunny, Sister. They're all TIFFs and PCX files. I can only guess what this is from 1996 and 1997, but unfortunately with the way the hard drive is acting, we're never going to get this data off, and probably none of us want to see what this is anyway. I don't know, I'll keep running this and just see if by some miracle get the hard drive to actually work properly, and maybe confirm, at least, and not visually, but I can confirm with you what these files are. But otherwise, there's not really a whole lot on here. The good news is that the processor's working, the memory that I pulled out of my stash seems to be working, the video card seems to be working. I would like to test out the sound card as well and see if we can get that working. This all could be just down to neglected case that somebody bent up and didn't want anymore and threw out. And everything inside was working just fine, it seems like, except for the hard drive. All right, so just on a whim, because otherwise I'm just going to be throwing this hard drive away, just to test a few wild theories that used to run around back in the day when I was working on computers and building them more frequently of this vintage. People would say you should either heat or cool your drive. And sometimes that meant putting it in the oven for a little bit. Sometimes that meant putting it in the refrigerator or the freezer for a while. And sometimes that would fix it, long enough for you to get your data off it. So just on a whim, I went ahead, since the oven was warm, I put it in the oven and I put it in upside down like this so that, maybe some of these connections would get reflowed. Really didn't get hot enough for that, but I put it in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. And that's as hot as I dared go because I could smell the plastic cooking in the drive, and, the shroud and some of the plastic bits here, probably aren't rated to stay at that temperature for very long. So let's just plug it in and turn this thing on. I mean, you never know, right? And if this doesn't work, well, maybe we'll try freezing it just for fun, because why not? The drive is definitely still spinning, but no clicking. It could be that I've completely melted the head assembly on the inside of this thing. When I try to go to C, we get invalid drive specification. I'll try rebooting a few more times, but assuming that nothing works here, we'll move on to the freezing method, because why not? All right, so here's my drive fresh from the freezer. Unlike the heating method where I let it cool down before I turned it on, with the freezer method, what I remember, these are all complete myths, by the way. I don't really believe any of these will work, but I remember people saying with the freezer method, you want to go ahead and hook it up right away and use it while it's still cold. The problem is with any of these things is that especially the freezer method, is that when you take something cold out and put it in a warm environment, you're going to get condensation. So not great for drives. Boy, this thing is cold though. Can I get that? There we go. Now the power's on. This thing is freezing. Woo, that's got to be close to 0 degrees Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit that is. So let's go ahead and turn it on. And we're getting spinning rust. See if it even detects it. If this takes too long here, then I know it's like whatever was melted in the oven is still bad, still not working. It's not so bad when you go from almost completely not working to, oh, that was a little quicker. We'll see. But it's not too bad when you go from, basically almost completely not working to still not working. I'm hearing a little skipping around it sounds like a little skipping of a head. We'll see if we get the hard drive error, which we probably will. Yeah, hard disk fail. So this one is toast. It was fun to try though. You never know. One of these days that's going to work and I'll be like, this is the greatest thing. But yeah, the freezing and the heating almost never ever works. The only thing that really works in this situation when you have those clicking heads is to find the exact same drive, and then you can try to emulate a clean room as much as possible. You can take the platters out, put them in the new drive. You have to do things with special things where you separate the heads manually so the heads don't collapse on themselves, because that can cause damage. And then there is sometimes a way that you can take the old platters, put them in a working, electronically working drive and get your data back. But, you know, you're also introducing a lot of dust and stuff in there. So it's very unlikely, but it might work for, you know, a day, and that might be enough to get get the data off the drive. In this case, yeah, I'll reboot it a couple times, but it doesn't look like this freezing method has done anything to improve the quality of this drive. All right, well, that hard drive turned out to be a dud, but I still want to test this sound card and see if this is working. So I went ahead and plugged it into the motherboard, and I've got this connected to my speakers back there in the distance. Perhaps you can see them right there. And yeah, I went ahead and booted up the system with one of my boot disks that has all these options on it. I chose expanded memory with mouse. I also went ahead and plugged in a USB mouse to my Hidman. Again, I'm going to talk about that on the main channel coming up very soon if you haven't seen it. And so I have a USB mouse, a USB keyboard, and that's not going to work because I need to hook up a serial cable. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I've got the serial cable connected and haven't tested this yet, so I assume this is going to work. I don't know. We'll find out. But one thing I noticed is that the Microsoft mouse driver came back and said Microsoft mouse not found. May have to use a different mouse driver. And also we've got the Creative Plug and Play Configuration Manager loaded, so you know, at least it didn't complain about this card being in here. And I also went ahead and connected a zip drive that has Doom on it. So we'll see if we can get all these things working. First of all, I need to go ahead and load the guest driver for the zip drive, see if that will show up. There we go. It's showing up as drive letter C. By the way, I also found out that version 5.4 seems to work really well for these internal IDE zip drives. Well, version 5.4 does not work for the external parallel versions. For that, you need version 5.0. So if that can help someone in the future, maybe store that away for later. Okay, on the zip drive, I have some drivers on here, and I have Qt Mouse, CT Mouse. Let's see if CT Mouse will work. Installed COM1 in mouse system mode, so that should work. Okay, I went ahead and pulled up Checkit just to see if we could test the mouse, make sure that's working through the Hidman. Right now, this is not working, so let me get another USB mouse, and we'll just see. Maybe this mouse is not supported with the Hidman yet. Okay, I know this is a mess, but the Hidman's definitely seeing my mouse input. You can see when I move the mouse around, it kind of blinks the light, and if I hit a button, it's blinking those lights, so that's activity, so that's working. So something on this motherboard is not working. Aha! Okay, so what happened is human error. I plugged the serial cable into the motherboard backwards because there's no shroud to make sure you plug it in the right way. So I had the pins the wrong way. I did not align with pin 1. Now I've got everything working, and now I see mouse driver installed for Microsoft Mouse. So now the mouse should be working. Let's just double check that with Checkit. Aha, there we go. I don't know if you can see that, but now it's moving around fine. Mouse buttons are working. I can move the mouse to the top, move the mouse to the bottom, move the mouse to the left, move the mouse to the right. Bing! Let's get to Doom and see if we get some sound. All right, here we go. Doom is getting ready to run, refreshing Daemon. Now, I didn't set anything up for this card, so I have no idea. I haven't done the setup for Doom. I'm just running it to see whether it's going to work or not. Okay, mouse detected. Went too fast. All right, so I'm not hearing anything. I think we should have sound by now, right? So I do have a mouse, that's good, but no sound. So let's go look at the setup. Maybe we need to redo the setup. Okay, choose music sound card. And choose the FX card, also Sound Blaster, okay. Ah, there we go. So it was all in the configuration. And luckily I had the volume, the little volume knob down here does work. And luckily I had the volume up to about halfway, so when this thing started I did hear it. But I just needed to go in and run the configuration, tell it I had a sound blaster, and we should be up and running. Let's see. Yep, got music. No sound effects though. Alright, so I've gone ahead and rebooted the system and loaded the mouse driver, but I remmed out the creative initialization software that I had in there before, and I wanted to try something called Unisound, which I didn't know existed till just now when I looked it up on the internet, thanks to a post over on Vogons from Jay Foxy or Foxy J or something like that. Put a picture of it up on the screen if I can find it again. But yeah, there's this driver called Unisound that's supposed to work with these plug-and-play motherboards, plug-and-play cards, and set up the right stuff for DOS. So it's got a bunch of configuration options. I'm just going to try to run it and see if that fixes our problem. There we go. It's loading. No plug-and-play cards detected. Okay, well, that's not going to work either. But maybe this will work for you. This is Jazz Fox. I don't know what that is, but he's still updating the driver. It's updated as of 2024, so that's pretty cool. If you can't get your plug-and-play sound cards to work, go ahead and try this Unisound driver. Maybe it'll work for you. Okay, first of all, this sound card with all the jumpers on it, it's not plug-and-play. I don't know why I had that brain fart, but it makes sense that that other driver wouldn't work with it because it's really meant to work with plug-and-play cards. Second of all, I just noticed when I touch this, it's like, it's not the cable. I can hold the cable still. It's when I move the card in the slot. Somehow it's doing something with the speaker. So we'll have to keep that in mind when we know the card's working because we heard it one time in Doom. Anyway, I went out and found the specific driver for this card. So the ESS config isn't able to find the card. Aha. Okay. So I went ahead and moved the card over to this bottom ISA slot here instead of the one I was in, and no more popping. And now the driver sees the actual card. So now it looks like everything is working. We have MPU 401 is disabled and the address is set to 300. So maybe this is what we need to do. Okay. I just hit the go.bat. Now it says that the MPU 401 is enabled with no IRQ and that it's set to 330. So that go.bat apparently is what you need to do. This looks like it's working now. Let's go back to Doom and see if we have sound and sound effects. Okay, I hear sound effects, so that's good. Let's see what happens. Well, got sound effects and no music. Now what's going on? Well, it's getting late. I'm going to troubleshoot this a little bit more in the morning. All right, well, it's the next morning, and I was doing a little research this morning and looking at the actual documentation of Unisound, and actually Unisound does support some non-plug-and-play cards, and this happens to be one of them. However, you have to use the tag /no PNP in order to get this to work. So I just did that. I booted up the computer, hit Unisound /no PNP, and it came up with card detected, and that is my card. So it detected the card. This is the model number of the chip on the card, ES1688, and it says loading default values. So I don't know whether it's pushing those values into the card, because I believe the card is configurable somewhat by software as well as hardware. I'm pretty sure the IRQ, though, for example, is IRQ 7 per the jumpers on the card, but maybe this can override that. So I don't know, but it has the settings for the card itself, your typical Sound Blaster type settings, and then it also has the ESS mixer settings here. So maybe now this card will work where the actual driver I was using before wasn't working. So let's go ahead and load up Doom and see if we get music and sound. Hey, there we go. We definitely have music. And let's see if we hear sound. Yeah, I'm hearing sound effects. Yeah, that looks good. Let's go ahead and do a new game. There, that's what I was expecting. And yeah, sound effects. Nice. And there we go. Finish the level. It's a little loud. I do want to try adjusting the volume on the card itself. Let me just adjust the volume down. Oh, goes up. Yeah, there we go. Now I've adjusted it down. So yeah, so that's actually working. Maybe something in the driver was causing the volume not to work, or it could also be that I've got some bad electrolytic caps. It wouldn't be a bad idea, because the caps shouldn't be that expensive on this card, to just go ahead and recap it, just because I actually like this card. I like that it's a good quality ESS card, and it is non-plug and play. So you can use it with DOS or you can use it with Windows. So I'm definitely going to be keeping that card and maybe make it one of my standard cards that I use for testing, especially with this Unisound driver. So for this bog standard PC from the 90s, everything is now working. The sound card works, video works, everything works except for the hard drive, which is no surprise. So a bog standard PC that just works, and this would make a great build for someone who maybe grew up with this particular, configuration of kind of a, well, bog standard. I hate to keep saying it, but 75 megahertz Pentium, no frills video card, ESS sound card. That's, not Sound Blaster. So to me, that fits the bill of a bog standard PC from the mid to late 90s. If you like this episode, there's going to be another one right over here that you can click on and watch. Thanks to all my supporters. And until next time, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you later.
End of line.